When narcissistic controlling people feel backed into a corner, meaning they're exposed, challenged, or losing control, they tend to react with a range of defensive, aggressive, or manipulative behaviors. Their reactions stem from a fragile ego, a deep seated fear of losing power, and an inability to process shame or vulnerability in a healthy way. Some of the most high profile examples of this play out with celebrities who have controlling or narcissistic tendencies and can't handle being held accountable. We're going to do something completely different today on the podcast. I'm going to dive into 3 current and past celebrity cases, and we're going to really talk about how that relates to how you might be dealing with narcissistic people in your own life. We're going to talk about what happens when they're backed in a corner. And more importantly, we'll discuss what you can learn from these situations when dealing with narcissistic, manipulative people in your own life. I've got the Narcissistic Playbook coming for you, and I've got a lot of ways that you can deal with these kinds of people. So stay tuned. I'm glad you're back. I am your host, Dr. Abby Medcalf. You know who I am. So way back in season 3 of the podcast, we're in season 7, I did an episode on how to deal with a narcissist, where I broke down, the 4 kinds of narcissism and how to deal with a narcissist, talked about gaslighting. I also have another episode on gaslighting specifically. So I really want you to go check those out if you think you have a narcissist in your life in some way. Today, I'm doing a different take on it in the hopes of giving you yet another viewpoint to help yourself if you're in a relationship with someone who has narcissistic tendencies. And I want to note that this podcast came out of my work with Molly McPherson, who's a crisis communication expert. She's amazing. If you don't follow her and her millions of followers on TikTok and everywhere else, she's on Nightline and TMZ everywhere. She's amazing. And wonderfully, we do episodes together on her podcast where we talk about celebrities, and she kind of does the PR angle and crisis communication with that. And I do sort of the psychology, and it's really fun. We have a great time together. But we did one about this narcissist playbook kind of thing. And I thought, wow, it was so good. And I thought it was so applicable to everyday humans that I decided to bring it here. So there you go. So if you saw me over there, you're going to hear a lot of the same things here, but I don't think there's a lot of overlap between our audiences at this point. But I really want to thank Molly for the inspiration for using this as a teaching tool. And I also want to say, of course, I do have quite a few celebrities and more famous people in my practice, but I have never worked with the people I'm going to mention today. I even met them. So, and I would never do that. I hope you all know that ethically. I would never even come close to hinting around, like in any way at all. So, and lastly, I want to say it's really important, I say this a lot, not to diagnose people from afar, which is really why I'm going to be saying narcissist today, but what I'm saying up front right now is people with narcissistic tendencies or controlling behavior, because that I can objectively name given certain people's kind of consistent behaviors and reactions. Also, I want to say that these cases I'm going to talk about today might be controversial to you. If so, take them with a grain of salt. Let's try something different today. We'll see how it lands. I don't plan to do a lot of this unless you love it. Let me know. But I thought it would be interesting today. So before we dive into the case studies and what you can learn from them, I want to break down the core tactics that, in my 40 years of experience now, have seen narcissists use when their ego and control and their sense of control is under attack. And again, I'm going to keep using the word narcissist, even though I'm very clear. I've not diagnosed these people. These celebrities, they don't necessarily have narcissism, but they certainly have what we would consider narcissistic tendencies. And I'll tell you, they really follow the playbook. And I wrote the playbook, years ago, really. I just haven't shared it yet. I have a lot of stuff I've done that I haven't necessarily shared with you all yet. I am a kind of voracious creator of things. And so I would have clients I was working with, or I would do something with, an organization and do a training, and I would create something that, just didn't find its way into a podcast episode. But when I was doing this work with Molly, she asked me, and I said, I have a list of narcissistic behavior, like these tendencies they have when they get backed into a corner. And it was just perfect. So here we go. So this is what happened. This is really, again, the playbook of a cornered narcissist or somebody with those kinds of controlling or narcissistic tendencies. And I want to discuss each and the psychological reasons behind them. Okay, so I'm going to go through them quick because there's 10 of them. The first one, which I think we see the most, is narcissistic rage. And so what that looks like is, explosive anger, verbal attacks, name calling, threats, even there can be physical aggression here. And it happens because their grandiose self-image is threatened in some way. They react with rage to intimidate and regain control. And their underlying fear really is that they're not as powerful or as superior as they believe. Number 2 is the victim mentality and playing the martyr. And what that looks like is they claim to be the real victim, right? I'm the victim. They're accusing others of being unfair, abusive, ganging up on them. And the reason it happens is because it's a manipulation tactic. They're trying to shift attention away from their own wrongdoing and make other people feel guilty because they're hoping to regain control through sympathy. Okay. Number 3 is gaslighting and reality distortion. And what that looks like is, denying the facts, rewriting history, making other people question their own memory and perception. Oh, I never said that. You're imagining things. You're being too sensitive, So it's not just sometimes you're questioning your perception of something too, like that, like, oh, I thought that seemed mean. And they're like, oh, it was just a joke. I don't know why you're so sensitive. They're questioning, they have you questioning what's real and what's not. And why that happens is because, they just can't tolerate being wrong or exposed. So they manipulate reality to protect their self-image. Number 4 is the silent treatment and stonewalling. So what that looks like is ignoring, withdrawing, refusing to change, refusing to engage in a conversation, giving you the cold shoulder. And of course, again, it's a control mechanism. It's meant to punish and make the other person, probably you, desperate for their attention, and it reinforces their power. Okay. Number 5 is projection and blame shifting. And what that looks like is they accuse others of the very things they're guilty of. So they'll say things like, well, you're the one who's controlling, or you're a narcissist, or you're this. And it happens because they can't handle personal accountability. So they deflect the blame onto others to avoid facing their own flaws. Number 6, and one of my favorites, is triangulation. And what that looks like is basically bringing a third party or a fourth or fifth or a ton of people into the conflict to validate their side. They'll turn people against each other or create confusion. And they'll, you hear things like, well, everybody in the office thinks so, that kind of stuff. And it happens because they need to why does it happen? It happens because they really need to maintain control by ensuring that others are on their side and what they're really trying to do is make you or their target feel isolated. Number 7 is love bombing, and sometimes fake remorse comes in here. And you all know love bombing. That looks like, the over-the-top apologies, the grand gestures, or really suddenly being affectionate and loving. And sometimes they'll do the rage thing. And if that doesn't work, if you've trained yourself to not react to that, they'll suddenly love bomb you. Oh, you're right. You're the best. I'm so lucky to have you. They'll do it the other way when they realize that they do this a lot. When one of these strategies doesn't work, they'll turn to another one. And love bombing happens because it's damage control. If they feel like they're losing their grip, they'll temporarily act, nice to reel you or the person back in. But then we both know it, right? They're going to get back to their toxic behavior as soon as they feel safe again. Okay. Number 8 are smear campaigns and character assassinations. So, spreading lies, twisting stories, trying to even ruin the reputation of the person confronting them. This happens a lot. I see in divorce when there's children. in regular people, not famous people too, but definitely, if you're trying to divorce a narcissist, they will do a smear campaign. Not just you, usually your family, your friends, everything. But they were also doing that when you were together. And it happens because if they can't control the person directly, they try to control how others perceive them. So that's what they're trying to do. Number 9 of 10, we're almost there, is self-destructive behavior or feigning a crisis. That's the one I see the most. So they'll threaten self-harm, they'll threaten even suicide, they'll sabotage themselves, or they create a dramatic crisis to divert attention. Suddenly, something huge happens. And this is a really extreme form of manipulation to regain control. And what they're doing is trying to make other people feel responsible for their well-being. Poor me, oh me. And number 10, which I almost always see, is they'll double down on control and escalation. So if they still feel cornered, when something's going on and they've tried a lot of their tactics, they'll increase their controlling behaviors. They'll, restrict finances, monitor communication, they'll escalate threats. And if the more subtle manipulation fails, they resort to outright coercion and to maintain their dominance. That's what they're trying to do. So let's get into the case studies I want to bring up. And there's 3. And I want to start with, and by the way, so I haven't met with any of these people. I don't hate these people. I don't, and again, you might be like, oh my God, this is terrible, Abby, or you might love it. I don't know. But again, take it with a grain of salt. But I can tell you sort of objectively what I see as a psychologist when I'm looking at a situation. And the first person I would talk about is the actor Ryan Reynolds. And I'm going to use 3 actors in this. And this ongoing legal battle between Blake Lively and Justin Baldoni, It Ends With Us. It really provides to me, a fascinating look at how powerful figures react when they get challenged, when their back is in a corner. And I know that Blake Lively seems to be at the forefront, but given the history of this couple and who Ryan Reynolds is, I think he's the true orchestrator behind the scenes. I really do. And I think he uses his influence to control the narrative. So what do we see from him? That's from the narcissistic playbook. We see the smear campaigns, right? These accusations have flown, about Baldoni. And when the receipts came in, it seemed that there was nothing to a lot of these allegations, which, we're talking about sexual misconduct and abuse, possible abuse, and so harassment. And I'm always on the female side, I'll tell you. And this was a hard one because, again, when the receipts came in, when proof, here are the texts, here's the stuff, there doesn't seem to be much to where Blake Lively was going. And it seems to me that Ryan Reynolds was really pulling the strings to sway the media coverage in favor of Lively. There was also a lot of triangulation. There was a lot of getting people on their side with, Blake was calling Taylor Swift one of her dragons. And, they were the woman who wrote the book. They were Colleen, I forget her name now. They were getting her on their side. There was a lot of like, who's on whose side. There was a lot of public image manipulation, right? And Reynolds is really a PR master, no matter what else you might think about him. And he was using his charm and humor to downplay the situation. And then he was like joking about it at the SNL, the Saturday Night Live special, which was in such poor taste and so horrifying. But, again, we're using something out of the playbook when you get cornered. Aren't I cute? Even talking about my wife's sexual harassment. You've got to be kidding me. There was a lot of legal power moves, lawsuits, countersuits. They've really been piling up. Talk about doubling down. The legal system has really been used as a weapon here. But there's a ton of doubling down, right? So I think the lesson for you is when you're dealing with manipulative people, expect them to recruit others to their side and distort the narrative. Okay. Expect that to happen. Expect them maybe to double down. And I think the best defense is to stick to clear boundaries and avoid engaging in their drama. Don't let them control the storyline. You control your own storyline. Okay. And I'm going to give tips overall at the end I have about 8 tips for if you're dealing with this kind of person, but I just want to say something for each case too. The case study number 2 I'm going to talk about is Bill Cosby, who is really the grandmaster of denial. I think his fall from grace is like a masterclass in how a narcissist fights back when they're exposed. And, as multiple women came forward accusing him of sexual assault, Bill Cosby's responses really followed the narcissistic playbook. There was denial and gaslighting. When the allegations first surfaced, he flat out denied them, calling them ridiculous, claiming the women were lying. He and his legal team framed the accusations as an attempt to extort money from him. Then he started playing the martyr. He claimed he was being unfairly targeted. The victim here, he said he was unfairly targeted because of his race and his success, portraying himself as the victim of a media conspiracy. When that's not working, there was a smear campaign against the accusers. His legal team and supporters were all trying to discredit the accusers by questioning their credibility, their past behavior, their motives. They implied that the women were either after money or seeking attention or revenge. There was a lot of projection and blame shifting. He not only denied responsibility, but suggested that his accusers were just fabricating their stories for personal gain. He was calling the Me Too movement a witch hunt. For a while there, he was engaging in the silent treatment. He was refusing to engage. And that happened for years. He refused to acknowledge the accusations publicly. He was dodging interviews, avoiding discussions about the allegations. And then, of course, woe is me, another one. Once he was convicted, he and his team played up his age, his health issues. He's frail, nearly blind old man. He didn't belong in prison. And I would say there was a lot of that escalation and doubling down because even after his conviction was overturned, he was super defiant. He showed no remorse. He kept hinting at a comeback. He continued to frame himself as the victim of injustice. And if someone in your life denies reality and goes on the offensive when they're confronted, don't engage in their distortions. And, I always tell people, document the facts, get outside support for yourself. Don't let them make you feel like the villain. Really, really important. Okay. And again, I'll get to all my tips, but I want to do a third study, which is Kevin Spacey. And he just came out with this. Oh my God, just really proving my point. I don't know if it just came out, but there's a video of him against this Guy Pearce, who accused him of things, just full of like contempt and vitriol. And again, Narcissist Playbook. And his response to his legal troubles very closely mirrors what Bill Cosby exhibited. Both men, to me, displayed really classic narcissistic controlling tendencies as they were backed into a corner. Spacey's case provides just another example of how people with these traits really react when that carefully maintained public image is threatened. So with him, again, denial and gaslighting. When there was an actor, his name was Anthony Rapp, when he first accused Spacey of making an unwanted sexual advance towards him as a teenager, Spacey responded by claiming he didn't remember the incident. Instead, he didn't address it directly, right? He didn't directly address the accusation. He used very vague language. He said, and I'm quoting, "If I did behave then, as he describes, I owe him the sincerest apology." Like really dismissive, really nothing. It's like vague. Again, masterful, I guess. The second is he uses a lot of this distraction and strategic deflection. So in that same statement where he vaguely addressed Rapp's allegations, right? He came out as gay. This is when he came out as gay. And of course, this shift in focus definitely led to some backlash, with a lot of people accusing him of using his sexuality as a shield to divert attention from the accusations. Like, what timing? Why would you talk about this now? A lot of people already knew, but why is this suddenly coming out in the same breath? he definitely, there was a smear campaign against his accusers. As more accusers and more came forward, his legal team attempted to undermine, again, their credibility, question their motives, attack their past behavior. His defense in court included claims that accusers were exaggerating or fabricating stories for attention, again, and financial gain. Again, sounds similar, right? He was also playing the victim, crying injustice. He repeatedly framed himself as a victim of cancel culture. He said, again, almost like Bill Cosby's language, this is a witch hunt. He claimed he was unfairly tried in the court of a public opinion. He suggested that he was the real target of an unjust system. I mean, there was legal maneuverings. He and his legal team really fought the allegations aggressively. They used legal loopholes. They delayed proceedings. He sought to have all the cases dismissed due to technicalities. In one case, an accuser suddenly dropped his lawsuit after refusing to turn over evidence. Actually, I'm not going to get into that. Never mind. Scratch that, because that was a whole other thing. I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but definitely there was grandiose behavior, no remorse. And he was acquitted. Even after being acquitted, it was a London trial. It was 2023. He remained defiant, giving interviews where he likened himself to a misunderstood figure and insisted he would make a Hollywood comeback also, just like Cosby. And his demeanor in, court and public appearances, to me, lacked any sign of genuine remorse at all. He, again, even though there was multiple accusations and lots of proof, he was acquitted, but there was a lot of stuff there, a lot of smoking guns. There was never, and that's the thing with this kind of thing. There's never just a sincere, like, wow, that was not okay. I was different than, whatever you want to say about who you were then and how you reacted to things. But there's no accountability. And that's definitely in the narcissistic playbook. So I taught you all that. I don't know, using celebrities sometimes can be helpful, sometimes not, who cares, right? But I want to get into the 8 tips for handling narcissists in your own life. And I want to remind you again that, by the way, that I have an online Patreon community called the One Love Collective. And in that community, I've got a bunch more tools, tips, I have worksheets, journaling prompts that's available to those members. So if you want to hear about them, listen to the end. If you're in the community, listen to the end. You'll know what's coming, or you can just go on Patreon and see. If you're someone who wants to dig deeper on all the topics I cover here on the podcast, I'm just going to say you might want to think about joining. It's an amazing community. I think of like-minded, loving people. It's a really safe space who want to create lasting change in their lives. And I've always meant the podcast to be sort of like free therapy in a way. And this, you do pay a little. It's not much. It's not millions. It's certainly nothing close to what I charge individually. But so yeah, it's some skin in the game. It's money. And for some people, it's a lot of money, depending on how much money you make a month. But the money each month is, to have access to the live Q&As and me. And I'm in the community all the time. I'm in there almost every day. I love it in there. Answering things and saying hi and just all of us sharing, how we're doing. But it's also a place where I have all this extra work, right? All these extra places, things to do to help you go deeper on certain issues. So if this narcissism thing means a lot to you, you might want to go so you can get all the extras. Okay. So 8 tips for handling narcissists in your own life. All right. So now you've seen how it plays out in the public eye. Here's what you can do when dealing with a narcissistic, controlling person in your life. Again, I can't say they're a narcissist, nor can you necessarily, unless they've been diagnosed by, a qualified health professional, but certainly if they fall in this category. Number 1, without a doubt, is focus on you, not them. You have to get out of the emotional blackmail of trying to keep them happy. You need to regularly remind yourself of your strengths, your desires, your goals. I want you to take time out each day to focus on yourself and calibrating your energy so that you're in control of you and you're not calibrating to their energy. And a reminder that I do have a calibration exercise, which I'll link to all the places that, you can, underneath the video, if you're watching on YouTube, over on the website, on the pages for the podcast or the relationship tips and tools, which is the blog, all those places will have a link to the calibration exercise. And I highly recommend you do it. It's a video of me. It's like a talking exercise. It's a visualization exercise. Very effective. I do it often. I like it a lot. And it'll really help calibrate you to a higher level so that you're not getting dragged down to the level of the narcissist in your life or the person with narcissistic tendencies in your life. And I noticed my voice is getting a little scratchy, so hold on. Okay. Oh, I went to the dentist this morning. When you get that whole, like, everything's still a little numb. But I'm okay. But it definitely feels a little weird. Number 2 is don't engage in the reality warping, because they're warping reality all the time. Document the facts. Rely on objective evidence. I can't tell you how often I say this to my clients. You have to document. If you are in a divorce sort of battle with a narcissist, I highly, highly recommend you use one of the stay away from texting, stay away from regular email, and use one of the platforms that's admissible in court. So, like, My Family Wizard is an example. There's a bunch of them here in the United States, at least. I don't know in other countries where you are what might be there, but why I like the ones that are admissible in court is because you can just document, like, whatever it is. You can just say, you email them in the platform, and you say the same thing. You say, hey, when you came today, you seemed really threatening. You made some threats about keeping the kids full time. I just wanted to document that here, and you're just calling the person out. It's great. Or just sending this email reminding you, you've been late 3 times this week. On Monday, you came at this time instead of this time. On Wednesday, this time instead of this time. Today, you were late 2 hours. I just want to remind you of what we agreed to, what the court agreement is, that you're here at this time every day. And again, they might send you they'll probably use something out of the narcissist playbook because you're putting them in a corner, but you don't need to react to that. So all you need to do is document the facts, because at some point, when you need to take action around your kids or whatever, that's the only reason I think you'd be doing this is if you had kids with this person. But if it's at work or something like that, there are ways to document everything so that when the time comes that HR is looking at something or a judge is looking at something, there will be a paper trail of what's been happening. So instead of because, they're going to try to make you seem like the crazy one. And when you just have a very objective paper trail, it goes a long way in people finally seeing these narcissists and controlling folks for who they are. So document. Number 3 is don't focus on changing them. You want to focus on changing your reaction to them. Let me say that again. Don't focus on changing them. Focus on changing your reaction to them. Stay calm. Don't engage in their chaos. Their goal is to provoke an emotional response. So it is so important that you not give that to them. Number 4, I'm going to say it sooner or later. No, not mindfulness. What's the other thing I always say? Hold firm boundaries. Don't let fear, guilt, manipulation, any of that drag you back into their control. Don't be a victim to their actions. Don't make idle threats. Keep your boundaries and be consistent with your responses. Be with your teeth, with what's on the other side. Okay? Every time. Number 5 is you will absolutely get pushback, so expect it. I think people are so surprised. They think, oh, I'm going to say this the perfect way. This is the one time they went. No, they're always going to push back or use something from the playbook, okay? They're going to use something from the playbook. Stop being surprised. Stop attaching yourself to their reactions. Their reactions are going to be their reactions. I can guarantee you this, whatever the reaction is, it is something to try to manipulate you. That's it. So they're either going to love bomb you, they're going to double down, they're going to gaslight, they're going to rage at you. They're going to do something to try to shift what you're doing. Your job is just to stay the course. Number 6 is you have to refuse to play their game. If they attack you, don't defend. Detach and move on. This is really a time for non-attachment. This isn't just like loving detachment. This is non-attachment, where you truly step back, where you say the thing and you have zero expectation about anything going a certain way or coming out a certain way. You just stick to right action. That's all you can do. It's right action to document. It's right action to send this email. If I'm not worried about how they're going to react or what they're going to say, I'm going to do this thing and do that thing. That's your job. Number 7 is to seek support. Having an outside perspective really helps you stay grounded. I can't tell you how many clients in my practice just say that to me, like, oh my God, what would I do if I didn't have you? All this, would feel so overwhelming. And you don't need a therapist necessarily, but you need a good friend, someone who has your back, someone who understands this. Maybe join a support group, something where you have support of like-minded folks, right? Might be through a religious affiliation or something, but you need support. Okay. Number 8 is limit or cut contact when necessary, and which is usually a lot. Some narcissists will never change, and the healthiest choice is to remove yourself from their influence. I shouldn't say some narcissists. Most narcissists will never change. So your healthiest choice is to remove yourself from their influence. If you've got kids with a narcissistic type person, I highly recommend. I did an episode on 5 tips for co-parenting with a toxic ex. I will link to that again in all the places I link. But that's a really good one to listen to if you have kids with this person. And I just want to say, to kind of wrap up, watching celebrities sort of spiral when they're backed into a corner, to me, gives me like a front row seat to how narcissistic controlling people react under pressure. And most of us aren't dealing with with multi-million-dollar lawsuits or Hollywood smear campaigns, thank God, but the same psychological patterns apply in our personal relationships, in our workplaces, in our families, right? So, you really want to not fall for their tactics. You want to keep your boundaries firm. You want to trust yourself. And more than anything, do not let them rewrite your reality. Okay. That's it for today. I hope that was helpful. I don't know. I've been doing this for 7.5 years now. So sometimes I like to try different things. This might not hit. This might hit amazingly. I don't know. But I thought it would be interesting to, at least since I've already written about narcissism, to try to take a little bit of a different tact. So I hope this was helpful today. If no one's told you this week, I love you. I so love you. I so am grateful to be here with you and trying new things. I'm going to get into now what the my One Love community gets online. If you are part of that, if you want to just hear about it, you can keep listening. And there's 3 tiers in the One Love Collective, and which is the Patreon community. Patreon is just a platform I use for this. Tier 1 is called the Inner Circle, and you'll be getting journaling prompts for better boundaries with a narcissist, along with the Playbook of a Cornered Narcissist handout. So all those things I mentioned just in one place. Tier 2, which is called the Love Accelerator. So every tier gets whatever was before it too. So tier 2 gets everything in tier 1, plus they're getting 3 tools for dealing with controlling narcissistic types. So 3 more, kind of very more in-depth tools. And then tier 3, which is the VIP Love Lab, gets everything in tier 1 and tier 2, and also gets a worksheet I wrote on walking away from a controlling relationship. So there's a worksheet on that. I have like a 5-step approach to how to do that. And then I have something I call the Narcissistic Word Trap Worksheet. It's another tool, but I kind of work you through it in a worksheet. You get that too. So it's a lot. I always want to really give to this community. I'm so excited that you're here with me doing the One Love Collective. It just, especially these days with the state of our world, it feels like a little escape for me most of the time to get in there and just, hear you all and talk to you and connect. It feels real good. So hopefully I believe all these will be super helpful to you as you try to do this work. If you're dealing with someone who has, again, narcissistic tendencies, controlling behavior, manipulative, gaslighting maybe, to really dig deeper so you can get better at how you handle yourself and handle them. All right. That is now really it for today. Thank you so much for being here. It means the world to me. And I love you so much. And I'll see you next week.